All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to this program of the University of Arkansas Small Business Technology and Development Center. We are pleased to be able to bring you these educational programs to help support small business. As the recording mentioned, please be advised that we will be recording this conversation for ASB TDC education purposes. Additionally, as a registrant and attendee of this conversation, you'll be emailed a copy of this recording and any links posted in the chat today. I'm going to introduce Melissa momentarily, but first I'd like to introduce us at the ASB TDC and tell you a little bit about who we are. I'm Lindsay Ramsey, and I'm a specialty marketing consultant with the center. If you don't know about the Small Business Development Center, it is a one-stop shop for startups and existing small businesses. We are associated with the University of Arkansas and affiliated with the SBA and a statewide ASB TDC, as well as a national network of more than 1,000 small business centers. Locally, we offer complimentary one-on-one consulting and programs like this one, where we cover the relevant topics for business owners. And if you're not already a client, we would love to encourage you to visit sbtdc.uark.edu so that we can start working with you. Today is part 2 of creating a profitable marketing strategy. It is meant to be a conversation. This is the time to bring your questions from last week, or if you didn't join us last week, we would love for you to jump in with the conversation and ask questions as you hear information that you're not familiar with. This is an interactive hour, so you're encouraged to let us know what you're working through and what you're curious about in regards to creating your profitable marketing strategy and the information that Melissa presented last week. At this point, we're going to kind of have you put your questions in the chat. Or if there's something you would like to ask Melissa, let us know in the chat. We can unmute you and you can talk, and then we'll mute you again. So we're looking forward to a good conversation, and I'll shorten Melissa's bio just a little because many of you heard from her last week. But she is based in Southern California, a marketer, speaker, consultant, and author. She works with small businesses how to market on a budget and helps them execute their marketing strategies. All right, so we are going to jump into this, Melissa. I think they heard most of this from me last week. So now is the time, guys. Put your questions in the chat, put them in the Q&A, raise your hand. This is an interactive hour, so let us know how we can assist you.
Thank you so much for that, Lindsay. Once again, thank you to Lindsay and Julie and Mary Beth and everybody who's over at the University of Arkansas SBTDC. This is such an important topic to bring to business owners. So rarely do we talk about lead retention and customer retention, and this is really all about that. So we're looking at not just how you've met people for the first time, but how do you keep the conversation going with people until they become your best customer, your best partner, your best whatever. So hopefully everybody who's listening in today did get a chance to hear last week's presentation, either live or recorded, because that was the crux of the information that you need. And my hope is that everybody got a chance to start working through an exercise around what elements of marketing go into your marketing plan. Because with that, we can start looking at how to put it into the shape of a marketing strategy and how everything connects together. So my goal today is for this to be a Q&A. So if you have questions, please feel free to put those into the Q&A box or the chat box. I'll have Lindsay on the lookout for those, so that in case I miss anything, I can, make sure to catch them. But, we're flying by the seat of our pants on this one because we're doing a virtual Q&A, which can be a little bit tricky, but this is a great chance. If you've got something happening in your specific business, this is a chance to talk about your business with somebody who would normally charge an hourly rate to talk through all of the different questions that you could present. And we're doing this just as part of the complimentary Q&A follow-up. So I really encourage you, if you've been working through your marketing plan and you're thinking about, okay, how do I meet people for the first time in my business? How do I keep them with me? How do I get them to the point where they can become my customer? How do I get them to be a repeat customer? If you have any questions like that, which pretty much covers all of marketing, like I said, feel free to throw those into the chat or into the Q&A. And we'll look for those and we'll drive the conversation that way. So I'm going to give a moment. I'll keep kind of filibustering for that just in case. And if nobody has questions, I am prepared to talk through some examples of different kinds of marketing strategies that may help prompt your questions. But again, whatever type of business you have, the beauty of a session like this is that asking your question will probably give somebody else ideas too. So it doesn't hurt to get business specific in a situation like this, because I think you'll find that you'll be able to take ideas from some other businesses that you might not have thought of for your own industry. So like I said, feel free to get those questions in. And in the meantime, what I think I will do, I believe there is a link available to watch that back later in case I think Sherry said she didn't have a chance to watch it. So Lindsay, how can they watch that initial session? Oh, you're on mute.
I'll put the link to exactly where they can go to find that initial session. I'll put it in the chat so everybody can see it.
Perfect. Well, with that in mind, I don't want you to have no content for this session. So feel free to still get those questions in anytime you have them. But what I am going to do in the meantime is I'm going to put up some examples, because I'd like to talk you through some working examples of sort of simplified business strategies, marketing strategies that may help inspire you on what could be happening in your business. So, in terms of what you potentially may see, let's talk about some different examples. You may see a couple of these that look similar to last time, but I wanted to flesh these out a bit more so that you can really get a sense of different options for different types of businesses. So last time you may remember we talked about something called the networker. I'm going to start here because it's probably the simplest version. Now, just talking you through the idea of this, and for those of you who haven't seen last week's content yet, just bear with me on this. The idea is that I really want you thinking about not just how people hear about your business for the first time, not just getting in front of a new lead for the first time, but then what happens? What happens next at every step? Every time you are talking to somebody in your business, a potential lead, a potential partner, volunteer, staff member, anything, what is the next seed that you can plant, the next thing that you can introduce them to, just to bring them a little further into your pipeline each time? And maybe it may take a few times to reiterate that call to action you've made before they take it, but you're kind of leading them by the hand. I like to think, would somebody take the next step if they don't see the stepping stone? Very few of the people who you're talking to will. Not a lot of people are going to be so excited and interested about your business that they're going to know exactly everything that they want to do with you from the very beginning. You, though, you can lead them by the hand and say, have you thought about this? Just so you know, this is here. And you're just sort of helping them make those steps if it's right for them. So it's both good for your business and it's good for customer service. So with that spirit in mind, we want to start creating a shape to that. So let me talk through this simplified example first before we get into anything more complicated than that. So at the top here, we've got this layer of this, what I would call tier one. It's this layer of how people can hear about the business for the very first time. And with that, we're looking at things like, okay, let's say this business, for example, they go to a networking event, maybe once a week, once a month. They're meeting other people that could potentially be leads, and they're making mutual introductions there. Another thing that they do to meet people for the first time is that people who already know them might be making referrals that they know about or that they don't know about. So that's how somebody can hear about this brand for the first time. Now, another example here of a way this business gets people to hear about them for the first time is that they have the owner has gone out and recorded podcasts. They have been a guest on somebody else's podcast. The material is recorded. It's out there for everybody to hear, and anybody can listen in and discover this business. Now, from any of these three things, we're calling this the networker example, right? Because they all are some sort of connection building, relationship building, networking opportunity. But from any of those things, probably what you want to do next is to get into more of a direct conversation with the person who has been introduced to the business. But that looks a little different from each of those first three resources, right? From a networking event, either you both met each other, right? So either of you can send that first follow-up. If I'm advising this business, I would say, make sure it's in your plan to do a follow-up, maybe the next day or the next evening. Have a plan for how you will do that next step in your outreach. From a referral, it could be either way. If the business owner knows that the referral was made and there's an introduction made directly, there is an opportunity for the business owner to do the follow-up and to say, hello, it's so great to meet you, and let's find out what we can talk about. But if they don't know that the referral was made, and that happens a lot, right? Somebody tells somebody else about your business and you have no idea that happened until the person contacts you. So in that case, yet again, we end up in a direct email or a direct phone call type of conversation. Or from this example where the owner has been on a podcast, they have no clue who's listened to the podcast until somebody reaches out to them. So maybe on that podcast, they say, hey, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Here's my email address. And so now they've planted that seed for somebody to get in touch. So from any of those three things, now this goal is to get into that first exchange, a direct exchange, probably through email, maybe through phone. But to keep it simple, I've put direct email here. So when I say this direct email, I mean that first exchange of emails up until the point where the conversation kind of reaches a natural pause. You know, you're getting to know each other, you're sort of figuring out if there's something that you can do. And then it hits that moment where there's just a pause in the conversation. So we've gotten from meeting somebody to having this direct conversation. And now we think, well, I want somebody to now go from that to buying my services as many times a year as possible. So they might go from, you know, you do that direct email. Now the conversation's gone cold and you don't want it to stay cold. So you'll think, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set a reminder to myself as the business owner, the networker, to reach back to this person every couple of months, just to see how things are going. To send a how are you doing email, or to ask them if they, about something they might have mentioned to you. From there, maybe you stay in front of them enough while they're buy your services one time. And if you can keep staying in front of them, maybe they buy your services again. Now, I'm going to show you one more example before I take a question that Lindsay just posed to me in the chat. Because this example, if we look at that and we say, you know what, people don't seem to be going from the direct email to the touching base every couple of months to just suddenly becoming my customer. The plan is there, but it doesn't seem to be working. So as a business owner, you think, okay, what's missing here? There's a gap that I need to fill in. And in this case, we're going to experiment with how to fill in that gap. And we realize maybe the relationship just isn't strong enough. Maybe I need something in the middle here to build a stronger relationship where when I put the call to action in front of them, they might take it. So with this example, same exact example, but you see I've added 3 boxes in the middle. So they go from hearing about your business for the first time, networking, referrals, or podcasts. Now they've gotten into that first email exchange. But now this business owner has decided my goal is not immediately to try to get them to buy my services one time. My goal from that first email series is to say, let's meet. Let's meet in person. Let's meet by Zoom. Let's meet by whatever means we can to build a face-to-face connection. So they'll say, okay, how about we find a time to meet for coffee, or we find a time to, get on a Zoom call. You schedule that time, you have a good conversation, and now that relationship is just a little bit stronger. So you think, okay, I'm going to try to take you a little bit further before I ask you to buy something or see if you need to buy something. What if I just send you my portfolio or further information about my business? And I'll ask if you want to be on my weekly newsletter so that I know you're going to continue to get emails from me weekly that are mass emails. But now we're going to go back into the original sequence. Now, from this point, we're going to touch base every couple months because you have a much stronger relationship. And now hopefully you do see this person buying the services one time. And then if you stay in front of them, buying them multiple times. So this is just giving you an avenue to think, how can I keep you moving forward? Instead of asking you to take a huge step forward, how can I get you to take little micro steps forward all the way? Now, this is where I want to address a question that Lindsay had put through to me. How can small businesses measure the profitability of a new marketing strategy? So let's take even a simple example like this, and we can apply this question to the other examples that I have as well. You can decide which of these things have a quantitative measurement. So for example, you might look at this. We just have these simple labels on these boxes. And we might start by saying, okay, let's set goals around how many networking events, referrals, and podcasts we want to get in any given month. And that is something that you can target, right? So the business owner can say, I want to attend 2 networking events a month. I'm hoping that I'll find a way to start generating referrals more consistently. And I'm aiming for 2 or 3 of those a month. And maybe I'd like to have one podcast that I've put out there per month that I've sort of gotten people back to, or maybe get a new podcast that comes out once a quarter. You can decide what the goal is there. And then from there, how many people do you want to get into that first direct email sequence? Is there a goal that you have around that? How many of those people do you want to get from that to meet for coffee? How many people do you want to, be touching base every couple of months with, or how many people do you want to become that one-time customer or multiple time a year customer? So you can set a goal, a numerical goal to most of these things, right? And then once you've done that, you can look month to month or once a quarter, or however often you're tracking and measuring the results. You can look back and see, how did I achieve all of those things? Now, some of these things are easier to compile the information for than others. For example, a weekly newsletter list, you're probably already getting that, overall number of subscribers. The number is probably already being tracked. It could be that you want to have people clicking on links within an email that you send out, offer links, and maybe you're tracking that information in the analytics of your email. With customers, there's probably some sort of contract or payment that's gone through. So you'll have the invoices from that or receipts from that you can be tracking separately. Or, when it comes to somebody being a customer or a client, for some of our businesses, not all customers and clients are created equal. Maybe you have a business where you just have a $5 product and you want to sell as many of them as you possibly can. And then you can track the quantity of $5 products you've sold. But what if you have a $5 product and a $50 product, and you want to track how many people in each category? This is something that you can start breaking out. So something that I really like about a format like this in its visual form is that you can kind of layer on top of it the things that the information, the quantities of things that you want to set as goals, so that you can start looking through quarterly or every half year or once a year to see, am I meeting those goals and where can I improve? So hopefully that kind of gives you a better idea of how to manage that.
Okay, we have another question, Melissa, and we can piggyback on what you just mentioned about timing. But in regards to timing, kind of like maybe indicating a little overwhelm with this in all the other aspects of running a small business. So how do owners prioritize? How do they find the time? Or maybe I answered the question by saying they prioritize it. How do they find the time? How much time will it take on a monthly basis? And then the attendee is wanting to know, at what point do they hire somebody else?
Ooh, really good questions. And I will say that I hate to give a wishy-washy "it depends" answer, because I'm a big believer that marketing costs money or time or a combination. So if you've got no time to give, but you do have money, a lot of people tend to steer more towards like advertising solutions that they can keep re-upping so that they don't have to spend much time, and they'll take more of a numbers game focus to their marketing plan. For some of us, we don't have as much money and we want to go more with things that take us time to build relationships. And that's an option as well. So you have to work with the resources that you have. So what I like about doing something like this is that you will see this is a more simple version of a marketing strategy. This is like one simple pipeline, but as we do later examples, I might show you some more complex versions of what might be more realistically happening in your business. And when you see all of the things that you can potentially do, one of the things that I want you to consider is, so one way that I'll often work with clients on something like this, when we come up with all the ways that somebody can be marketed to in your business, we will then circle the things or highlight the things or put in a different color the things that they're going to prioritize based on the resources that they have available. So that could be time or money. Now, for some people, they say, this is all good and I don't have the time to do all of it, so I would like to delegate some of this work. And maybe they get a virtual assistant, or they have an intern or a volunteer on their team, or a staff member on their team, and they'll highlight and circle the things that they're going to give away to somebody else. One of the ways that I've used this for my business is that as I get a bit further on into the funnel, like touching base every couple of months, weekly newsletters, some of these things are automated or scheduled. So you can start creating, use systems that are mechanized for you so that you're not necessarily spending all that time. I have a lot of email follow-up that I do in my business, but some of that is sequences that are pre-filled. And when somebody hits a certain milestone, I just activate that sequence for them. So I took time to plan out that sequence once, and now it's good to go forever. And in other cases, I want to have that one-to-one connection. So this is really about you deciding where you can put the time. Coming up with your strategy is a project that you do once. I encourage you to look at it maybe once a year just to make sure it's still accurate, that you're making changes in your business. But doing this project once will help you create efficiency in the rest of your marketing plan, because you will end up finding that there are things that you're doing that are busy work, that are duplicative, or maybe there are things that you're doing that you're missing something else you should be doing. So it's actually going nowhere. So identifying those things is actually really important to start with. So if you've got, sometimes I'll talk to a client and we'll just say, okay, we just need something really simple. You're going to meet people at this networking event. You're going to get them to your website. You're going to get them to sign up for something. And now you're going to send them an email sequence so that you're following up with them. And that's a very simple thing that you can do. And only so many of those things actually take your time. So hopefully that starts to address a little bit of the timing question around it, but use a format like this as well. If there's something that you feel like, this would be such a good thing to do, and I have no bandwidth to do it, but I can delegate it. Having a visual helps you sort of highlight, okay, if I delegate this, what else could I delegate that's attached to that exercise? And once you start getting rid of some of that work and you're comfortable with the person that you've hired or that is helping you, you'll find that you can start giving them more and more tasks because they now understand what's happening in your business. So hopefully that does start to address that question. And please feel free to have more questions come in as we go. I'm going to keep going through examples to get you thinking, but this is hopefully just giving you some ideas. None of your businesses are going to look exactly like these examples, but hopefully we'll find an example that is similar to your business along the way. I wanted to show you something that's pretty different from the other one. And this is an example of a business that maybe is going for like big contracts, big relationships. So with this, we're just going to talk through this idea, and maybe this looks like some of your businesses too. So in a version of, the funnel for this business, let's say this business wants to start by what kind of contacts you want. This business owner knows what kind of contacts would be good clients. So what they're going to do first is they're going to build a list. They're going to say, I want to actually solicit some of these people, but who are the right people? So they might sit down and they might make a list of some contacts. Maybe they don't even need a big list because they have really targeted products and services. So they'll sit down and they'll say, okay, I'm going to make a list of types of businesses that could be my clients, or types of, if it's a B2C business, maybe, you're going directly to the consumer. So you'll build the list of the people that you want to reach out to, and that's going to lead to an email from you to them. Now, another thing that could happen is maybe there are companies out there that are saying, we want somebody with services like yours or products like yours. So we're going to put out request for proposal. So anybody who provides the services that this business provides can apply to get that contract. So maybe there's a place that you'll look to find those RFPs so that when there's something that needs to be pursued. So you'll see those first two examples are very different in that one, the business is going to start the outreach. And in the other case, the person ultimately who's going to be the client is putting out a request for people who will be the supplier to put in their bid. Now, a third example here of a way this business can get into the universe, can get people to be aware of their brand for the first time. Maybe they end up on a supplier list. So anybody who's looking for suppliers with that type of product or service can potentially find this business because it's on a vetted supplier list. So those are three, again, examples of ways that this business can be out there for the first time. Now, from there, we may try to get into that direct email sequence, just get that first conversation going, get the information about what they need from you, about what they're looking for. And now maybe the ultimate goal is to get to a point where you've got a face-to-face pitch or a full proposal, and you're hoping to go from there to a contract, right? But it doesn't always happen that it's so seamless that way. So what if, this business says, look, maybe that's not working perfectly for me to go from meeting the contact to direct emails to getting the pitch or the proposal out there to the contract. I feel like I need to insert some steps. So maybe they try something. Maybe they say, ooh, I'm trying to get in front of the decision maker, but it seems like there's a gatekeeper who's pretty important here in terms of that relationship. So maybe I'm going to try to build the relationship in both places so I can get a deeper look from the decision maker. So maybe something they experiment with is, if it's not working perfectly to have the leaner version of this funnel, maybe they try this little offshoot also. They'll say, okay, from that first email, I'm also going to try to find out who the gatekeeper is. I'm going to connect with that person. Maybe I'll say hi to them. Maybe I'll send them some emails, or, maybe I'll actually give them a gift, or, something that will make them really notice me. And I might then, or maybe I'll skip straight to asking the gatekeeper for their own input because I value their opinion, and hardly anybody ever asks for the gatekeeper's opinion. So, if I can get them to share that, it might give me some good information. And then maybe I can get them to introduce me to the decision maker. And now we go back to that face-to-face pitch and the contract. And, something that I'd like you to start thinking for each of these examples is, once you've got that contract, does that have to be the end of the road? What happens after that? Could you re-up the contract when the contract is done? Can you plan to follow up with them once a year? Could you ask them for referrals to other people? Maybe it's a big company and other departments may need your services. So these are the types of things that you might consider in terms of sort of looping back around to the top of the funnel without too much extra effort. So these are some ideas to consider if you've got a company that has big contracts. And I do want to go back to a question that was asked on the last slide around, okay, how would you map this out in terms of timing? Well, where are you really spending the time here? You've built the list once, you're doing that outreach, right? And maybe you do a few follow-ups. Maybe you are once a week or once every 2 weeks or once a month or however often looking in some resources where you'd find RFPs. Or maybe you just have a network of people who are passing them along to you. Once you're on that supplier list, you're on the supplier list, that's done. You don't need to do it anymore. And now your follow-up is with the leads that you're getting, right? So chances are a business like this may have a lower volume of contacts, but a much higher volume of relationship building conversations along the way, because the bigger the contract, most likely the more you'll want to have a relationship to get it in place. So in this case, we're even looking at managing 2 relationships, a decision maker and maybe even a gatekeeper. So if you can create a leaner version of this funnel that works for you, great. And if there's a gap and something's not quite working, here are some ways that you can potentially fill it in. But I'm hoping that what you're seeing here is that we are trying to get people to continue moving through until they become your best customer. We don't want them to stop at just getting your RFP. We don't want them to just stop at just seeing your name on the supplier list. We want to have a next step every step of the way so that you're never sitting there wondering, whatever happened to that person? That was such a great lead for me, and I haven't heard from them in a really long time. So if you think of nothing else, if you come away from this talk with nothing else, just be thinking, what is the next step at each of these phases? And if you don't see that there is a next step, probably your customers don't either. So it's why it's so important to see it laid out in front of you this way. Now, just to keep in mind, I'm always happy to answer questions. I will keep going through examples if there aren't any, because we might eventually land on a business that looks a little bit more similar to what your business is. But please do feel free to get those questions into the Q&A or the chat if you want to talk through your specific business. You can interrupt me at any time. So having said that, let's look at another example. This is going to look a little more complicated, and I'm kind of building it on purpose. This is an example of a business that perhaps has a direct to consumer and a B2B, business to business component of their business. So, and actually, I do want to address something that just came in from Shanti, who wasn't able to attend last week, but I was talking in terms of larger contracts. You sell services directly to the client. And yeah, this is an example. I'm going to show you two sides, one of which does deal directly with what you're talking about. Now, the first example too, the networker example, could be an example that works for services or products. So maybe look back at that example too, because it can be services, products, whatever for the networker. The last one was much more in terms of the big contracts. This one though, I'm glad that you asked that, because that does set us up here. And this is a good reminder to me to let you know that, you may very well take a model like this and make it work for you. Everybody's business is really, it's just about making sure you know what the next step is for the people that you're talking to. So there's always a next step, no matter what kind of business you have. So in this case, we're looking at something that has, like Shanti was just saying, a direct to consumer angle. That's actually the part of the example that's on the left. And then this business also has a business to business component where they're trying to reach wholesalers and other retailers. So let's talk through those. And let's look at the direct to consumer piece of it first on the left. So let's say you want to think about how your business is going to reach somebody for the very first time, direct to consumer. So it could be, again, maybe somebody's made a referral. They've used the service, they've used the product. Maybe you have, for example, like dog training or day school for dogs type of business. And you can potentially get referrals from other people who are dog owners. So you've got this referral that comes in, and that's great. You can potentially have social media presence. So maybe you're doing posts, maybe sometimes you're engaging in groups talking about how much people love dogs. So you can do that. People can discover the business for the very first time. Maybe you've got a presence at a local farmer's market because you're in a local community and you want people to know about your business. Maybe you've got a little water bowl next to your station, so the people with dogs are automatically going to be dragged into your location. And so once you've got people there, maybe you can talk with them in whatever way is possible, but you don't know necessarily how much time you have to talk to any of those people. So you're hoping that they're going to follow up by looking you up on the internet. So let's say you want to get them to your website. Great. So now you've got them on your website, but you don't want them to stop there. You don't want them to land on your website and go, that was cool, I'm going to walk away from it. So what can you do to get people to stay involved? Maybe you have them sign up for something like what I've called a lead magnet here. Is there something they can opt in for? Is there a discount you can give them on their services for the first time? Is there a checklist of things they can do to care for their dog? Is there a tip sheet of something they can do at home, or how to know when you need to bring your dog in for training? So those are all potential ways you can get them to sign up for something free that now puts them on your list. So they were on your website and they're interested. And now from there, maybe you get them on a newsletter list. Every single person who signed up for that opt-in automatically ends up getting emailed on a newsletter, maybe once a quarter, maybe once every couple months, maybe once a month. And from there, you're hoping that people will buy your product or service or come in for your training once. And then maybe you want them to come back. Maybe you want them to do a bigger package with you. Maybe you want them to be a repeat customer. Maybe you want them to make a referral to somebody else. So it's about sort of taking them through the next steps of what would be logical. But there could be another pathway that we bring them through on the website too. Like maybe, for example, somebody is an interested customer and they want to get preferential treatment. They want to be able to get discounts, or they want to be able to have special access to your business, or they want to be part of your community. Maybe you have a membership group set up on your website that they can sign up for. And from there, they'll get access to information about special campaigns or special events, or group dog walks, or whatever you've got going on. And from that group, you might get some people who buy the service one time. And from there, can you get them to keep building on that or making referrals? So that would be an example of the side of the business that is direct to consumer, or we might say B2C. And I used a specific example of a type of business here, but really anything that has a product or a service can be direct to consumer. This would be an example that would fit that. But I want to also show you what it might look like if this business has a side where they're trying to sell something to a wholesaler or a retailer. So let me actually switch up the example here to something that might be more product oriented. Let's say you're selling blueberries, and you know that you could sell blueberries directly to consumers. You know, you could sell it directly to consumers and basically follow that whole pathway on the left. But you've also got people who might buy your blueberries who are selling them to bakeries that will use them in their pies, or that are selling them to people who are selling them in bulk to other people. So you might want to also tap into that model as well. And in that case, how can you develop that pipeline for the business? Well, from here, we'll come up with maybe 2 examples. How can somebody hear about this blueberry business for the very first time who would be interested to buy in bulk? Well, maybe they've seen you at some sort of a trade show or a farmer's market. Maybe you have built a list of them. Maybe you've built a list of every bakery in the area, and you want to try to see if you can become their supplier for blueberries. So you've built the list and you're going to reach out to those people. So whether they met you at the trade show or you met them or the farmer's market, or whether you built the list, you're hoping to get into that first email sequence with them. And you're saying, hey, you want blueberries? I've got them. And here's the price. I'm going to give you a line sheet or a sell sheet or whatever the sheet is called in that industry to show them the quantities that comes in, the package sizes, the pricing. Really making the business side of it as easy as possible for them. Now they've got this information about what the product is, and you want to take that a little further. Maybe you can get on the phone with this person, or maybe that's not what you need. Maybe you need to give them a sample, have them taste the product and see how that works out for them, or give them a tour of the factory or something. More likely you see people doing like the sample model with a product. But you're probably going to have some follow-up conversation with them. And from there, hopefully they'll be so excited about it that they'll buy a small quantity from you to start with. Great. Maybe they'll get it directly from you. Maybe they'll get it from a distributor, but they get that purchase that first time, but it's usually going to start as a small quantity because they're going to test it out and see if they like it and see if they like the relationship. So then what happens after that? Well, you want them to buy more. You want them to buy it regularly. So you want to keep that conversation going. You want to follow up and say, hey, how did it work out for you? You want to get another order of it. So we don't want these things to be the ending point. We want them to be the beginning of the next sale, if possible, or the next referral. So the reason I put an example like this all on one page is that for a business that has both a direct to consumer and a potential wholesale or retail market, you might look at these 2 pipelines and think, this looks like 2 completely different things. They're completely isolated from each other. But I want you to understand that they actually kind of influence each other. So if you're a wholesaler thinking about buying blueberries from this company, you are probably going to be more interested if you know that there is an existing market for this product. If you know that people love that product and they're just looking for a place to buy it, or if you know people love those blueberries and they'd love to have them in a pie, that becomes something that's sellable for this business. So that business will be encouraged if they see, oh, you've got a lot of people checking out your website. You've got a lot of people following you on social media. You got a ton of people on your newsletter list. You've got a lot of customers of your own. The more you can start showing them quantities in those areas, the stronger the selling case you're able to make to the wholesaler or the retailer. And the reverse is true too, because if a customer, you're on the direct to customer side, if somebody sees that your product is placed in all of these big brand name stores or stores that they recognize and trust, they're much more likely to be willing to trust you to give it a look that first time. Right. So that's something to consider as well. Now, in the case of something like Shanti's business, you are unlikely to have a wholesale and retail side, but just giving you an example that shows you all of these different pathways so that you can really start to get a sense of how perception influences both sides. So I'm curious, if anybody who's listening in, what types of businesses do you have Are you so far seeing any examples here that begin to look like the business that you have? If not, what type of business do you have? I'd love to get some responses in the chat there, because I can make up any examples on the fly that you want me to. And that way it'll be much more specific to you. So yeah, and one of the things that I want to circle back to here is that idea of social proof. So often we are, for almost every buyer, we're really looking to make them trust us and understand that we're good at what we do, to make them understand that our products and services are really strong. Maybe our consulting, we're really good at giving information. You want to show expertise or authority or high quality in your product or service. And unfortunately, the world that we live in, sometimes that's shown by how many people are in your community, or the type of people who are in your community, or who's backing you, or who's got a testimonial on your website. So when you look at things like this example, think about which of these things can I use to sort of have a feather in my cap. Can I tell people, well, I've got a subscriber list of 10,000. I've got a subscriber list of 1,000. I've got, X number of customers on my list. Maybe you have a small number of customers, but they keep coming back all the time. Once somebody has bought once, they never go out and look for another resource. So anytime you can show something that starts to show proof of how strong and great your business is, find ways to represent that. Show it on your website, show it in any promotional materials you have. That's the kind of stuff that will help potentially drive people further into your funnel and hopefully make it a little easier. So I do have a couple comments coming in, and I want to make sure I address those before I move on. And so one person had made a note that the flow from the referral to repeat bulk customer is more the model for you, which is so great, because I find a lot of times people get stuck at the idea of, okay, somebody bought my product or service once, but those people could very well be your best customers. They might buy something from you again. And if they don't, they might have other friends that they can refer you to, or other people in their network. We don't want to lose those people. So when you get to what looks like the end of the funnel here, consider, how can I make this person an advocate for me, or have them come back again? Sometimes that's sending them a follow-up email sequence over time, saying, oh, how did it go for you? Maybe checking in when you think the product or service is going to run out, or when you think they're going to need to come back and book another appointment, and say, oh, it looks like it might be about time to get a refresh. It could be that you check in with them in a year and you say, happy anniversary of when you last came in, and I'm just checking to see how everything's going. You can get people's feedback or testimonials. If you think that they're potentially going to know others in their community that they could refer you to, can you incentivize referrals in some way? Can you reward them and tell them what that reward is? So really think about how you can leverage that for your business, because we don't want people to stop at being our customers one time and then never hear from them again, and they never hear from us again. I once did a presentation for a bed and breakfast association in New Zealand, and they were convinced before I started talking to them that people would only ever stay in their properties once, because somebody made their trip to New Zealand. It was the trip of a lifetime. They're never going to come back. And I told them, look, I lived in New Zealand working for a Rugby World Cup for almost 2 years. And since I left, I have met maybe 5 or 6 different people who were planning to travel to New Zealand, who knew that I had lived there, and they asked me for recommendations. And I sat down with those people with a map of the country and made recommendations for them. And you could have been a recommendation if I remembered you. Right? So even when you think that somebody's never going to come back, you just flat out don't know who they're talking to. And it's worth it to find a way to stay in front of them. So I've had a couple other comments come in. Let me make sure that I address them. We have one person who said they're floating between this wholesaler retailer space. been selling direct to consumer for about 4 years and have a little experience selling to specialty shops. It's been a challenge working through the numbers to determine pricing of products across the line. Now it's more considering the manufacturing that's possible to build the wholesale market potential. Now, this is something, this is such a great question. I'm showing you how to stay in front of people from a marketing standpoint. But that's not to say that this is looking at this from a numbers standpoint. And it may be worth literally working, in fact, work with somebody at the SBTDC. I am sure, and I might even give Lindsay a chance to jump in on this. I'm sure there's somebody at the SBTDC who knows their numbers, who's willing to look at a model like this and sit down with you and say, what is the price point? What is the cost of goods? And literally layer those numbers onto these different sections to make sure your business is making ends meet. For some people, the wholesale part doesn't really work from a numbers standpoint, and they have to figure out how to either make changes to that or abandon it. So I want to throw that back over to Lindsay because she's chomping at the bit.
Yeah, I actually commented back and let her know that we'd be happy to work, and that my background is in retail, and I have worked with a lot of wholesale products and have worked with clients here in the center who were facing that exact same question. So I'm not exactly sure what part of the state you're in, but we definitely can have somebody that can help you work through those things, and you can sign up on our website.
That's so awesome. And yeah, I mean, always know your numbers, I would say. And, you know, sometimes the numbers shift. We've certainly seen that last year and this year. If you knew your numbers 3 years ago, things have probably shifted around a bit in this last couple of years. The markets have changed so much, and cost of goods has certainly changed a lot for so many people. So, you know, I would say, regardless of what you're looking at from a marketing standpoint, we always want to be thinking, how can I drive somebody further? But as a business owner, you also want to be thinking, practically speaking, what am I driving you to? Because is it making sense for my business? I'm going to tell you an example for my own business. I don't know if any of you have consulting practices, but I started doing a funnel for my own business. And one of the things I realized a few years back was, look, I've got these different service lines. But most of the ways that I made money involved me spending my time. So, an hour of my time yielded X number of dollars. And I started to look at that and I realized, what if something happens to me? What if I need a break? What if I am forced to take a break for some reason that is out of my control? Can I not make money in my business anymore? That's a problem. That was scary to me because I felt like I was getting momentum with clients, but that momentum could eventually not matter if I'm taken out of commission in my business for some amount of time. So I sat and looked at my funnel and I thought, what's the solution for this? Solution one, which I didn't like, was, could I hire somebody else to coach on my behalf? Could I train somebody else to coach using my model? And I thought, I really didn't feel comfortable with that because so much of what I do is about creatively thinking about somebody's business. And I don't know how to train somebody perfectly to do that. So I was like, okay, what's the solution to this problem? And I thought, well, if I can't hire somebody, what if I could replicate myself? So I created a line of courses. It was a one-time project. I created courses in all of the main areas of my training. It comes with worksheets and curriculum. I recorded presentations. I loaded them all up onto a platform. And now I have that as a passive income resource. And it's also something that I use those worksheets when I work with clients. I use those worksheets. In fact, I shared one for you to work on in the first session leading into this one. So, I can now use that content, but this was all about me solving a problem based on looking at a visual. And if anybody has a business like that, it's the kind of thing you might want to think about, because sometimes when the dollars that you make are attached to some amount of your time, it puts you in a risky position as you get a little older and further into your business. I'm going to keep reading through some comments that are coming in here. And I love that this is all, sparking ideas and questions for you all. So somebody said, the referral program idea is great. I have clients that have grown out of the need for us. They refer to us and we send thank you cards with gift cards to local coffee shops. Such a great idea. That might not work in its exact form for everybody, but if you have a really low margin on your products and services, you might not give somebody, maybe you have a thank you card or a thank you email and not a full gift. If you've got a huge margin, if you're selling real estate, if you're selling a really big ticket item, you're probably going to wine and dine these people who have made a referral for you. So really look at what the potential return on investment is for you with those referrals. And if you can reward them in a tangible way, you'll probably get more referrals. But even if you can't reward them in an expensive way, sometimes just saying thank you yields another referral right on the back of it. So always build in some sort of a plan for how you're going to follow up with people. And we've seen things like loyalty cards and stuff like that for the people who may be likely to come back to your business. So think about how you can do that efficiently and effectively for what your business model is, and work with that to do more of it if possible. Let's see. And a further comment from the person who was talking about business to the wholesale and the retail market. They were saying you have to be able to provide the product when you market, an interesting dance, production, and marketing. It's so true. A lot of people, especially with products, they're going to want to get a sample. They're going to want to get an example, and you're going to have low quantities or small quantities of that product if possible to be able to put that out there. And that has an expense to it too. That all goes into your costs. So, wholesale is tricky. You don't have as much control over the pricing there. There's, more of a known market for it. And sometimes you may find more flexibility in the direct to consumer line. But again, if you look at that idea of like, is there clout attached to being located in certain stores or being connected with certain brands? Is that clout enough to get you more direct to consumer customers? So you kind of want to look at the big picture there to make sure that you're not shortchanging yourself in terms of either side of the market. But these are great questions. I'm going to show you one more example, which this is an example that is going to look bigger. It's going to look scarier, but actually on the left, that's just the networker. We've done that already. So I'm going to talk you through this. And you may have seen an example like this already, but I'm going to take it one step further on the next slide. So this is really looking at the whole picture of a business, right? All the ways you can reach somebody for the first time and kind of what it looks like when they're your best customers, right? So how this business reaches somebody for the first time. Now I'm going to mix a bunch of different ideas in here. So who knows what this business is? Bear with me. We're just going to talk about how to keep people moving forward. So ways people can hear about this business for the first time. Again, like that networker example said, you go to a networking event once a month. Okay, great. You might get referrals from other customers. Maybe you've incentivized those. And this business owner, like we said before, they've been on a podcast or two or several. They're out there in the universe. People can listen to them and discover the business. But in addition to those things, this business owner is also putting ads in local newspapers. They've got a storefront with signage. People can walk by it and they can get familiar with the name of that business. Maybe they have a social media presence on some number of platforms, or maybe just one. Maybe they're posting or they're regularly interacting in other community pages. And maybe somebody does an online search. They're like, ooh, how do I find coffee shops near me? And they're looking for what the results will be. So those are ways that this business can become, somebody can become aware of the brand of this business for the first time, but we don't want them to stop there, right? So let's look at the left. This is just the networker. So from the networking event, the referrals of the podcasts, we're going to get into that email sequence, see if we can meet for coffee, send the portfolio. Now we've got a really strong relationship to start from. Now we'll just touch base every couple of months. Hey, how are things going with your kids? You said they had that, the dance recital was coming up. And then, just staying in their inbox so they know that you're still there. And then eventually you get to the point, oh, by the way, do you need these services yet? Yeah, sure, I need them. Let's get them once. And from there, you stay in front of them. Can I become a customer more than once? Can you get that person to be, multiple time customer, referral to other, to other businesses or other people, like bringing them back into the top of the funnel? So that's the networker example. We've seen that one, but this business has a couple other things going on too. So they've got ads in a newspaper. Well, they don't want somebody to see the ad and then just walk away from them. They want them to maybe sign up for something. So they're going to put an incentive or something to sign up for in that newspaper ad, as a call to action. Now that'll put them on a newsletter list where you'll keep kind of mentioning products and services until they buy your services once, and then hopefully buy them multiple times a year if you can stay in front of them. Now on the right, we've got this pathway that's like they see your signage in a storefront, they see you on social media, they did a search on Google or some other search engine, and now they discover your website. It's like, oh, that business sounded interesting, let me see more. Okay, they land on a website. They don't have a strong relationship yet though. So what can I do? Okay, business owner thinks, maybe I'll put some blogs out there, explain how I do business, my values of how I do business, more about my expertise. Now they're getting a little more convinced. Now, whatever this business is, they think, okay, from these blogs, maybe I'll invite you to do an exercise or buy a worksheet or buy a manual or a tip sheet or something so that I can get a little bit of money from you as passive income. And from the people who do that, maybe you would try to upsell them to a whole course. And from the people who bought that, maybe you try to get them to a conference. I'm not really sure what this business is. It's got a lot going on, but just to keep giving you these ideas of moving people through. And then, you can see, I want to show you at the top there, not all the arrows are just going straight down the funnel. Some of them are going sideways, right? That's fine. That's potentially just finding new ways to build strength and get people to the right place in your marketing plan. My own business, I have people hover around newsletters sometimes for years before they become my client. And that's fine for me. That's why I put the newsletter into my marketing plan. So I want to show you one quick modification on this before we sort of close out for the day, but you'll see that those arrows go sideways. And I wanted to also show you an example of an arrow that goes the other direction. This is not a defeat. This is, again, trying to find places for people to land in your marketing plan. So, are they, maybe they found the right bus and there are multiple different seats that they could be in. So in this example, we walked through how somebody might eventually get to a live event. Well, somebody is now at a live event and they could be your customer. So why not see if you can tell people about your services so you can get some of those people to buy services one time? It's not a defeat to have them going what appears to be backwards in your funnel. This is a success because you found another way to serve them. You found another way to help them move forward in whatever they needed your business for, and you're finding another way to sell to them. So all of these things, this is just giving you ideas. Now, for those of you who came on today and hadn't seen the presentation yet, please do go back and watch the whole presentation because this is going to give you way more of a roadmap. But these examples, it's great that you are going to have a recording for this because some of these examples may start to feel a little bit more like your business. And I wanted to make sure that you had that. Before I hand it back to Lindsay to close out, I just wanted to remind you there are a couple more sessions. We've actually got quite a number of sessions planned even beyond January. I just wanted to give you the next two. We've got one coming up November 3rd called Build a Smart Online Marketing Strategy. We're going to talk about how to use websites, blogs, social media, newsletters, and lead magnets to be really smart and create a solid plan for relationship building for your community. And then on January 26th, don't miss that one. We're going to talk about partnership marketing. I hope everybody attends it because we're going to see if you can potentially find some ideas for how to collaborate with other businesses in your area or outside of your area so that you can all boost your businesses together. And I will just remind you, this is the slide with the information that you need on how to do this exercise for your business. And again, if you go back and you watch the original presentation, this exercise, this homework exercise is also in there. This is where you figure out all the puzzle pieces you need to go into your funnel before you start laying it out. So we'll try to make sure that we get that link into the chat, and I will hand it over to Lindsay while I type that in case there's anything that you wanted to say as we close out here.
Yeah, I hope you can all hear me. It's saying that my internet connection is unstable.
No, you're good.
Okay, thank you guys for being here. As a registrant and attendee of this conversation, we're going to email you a copy of the recording. You can also find it online at any time. The last week's is already uploaded, and this one will be up there in a couple days. You can find a full listing of our workshops, like the ones Melissa mentioned, as well as others at sbtdc.uark. And you can sign up for notifications or become a client. We're also posting on social media. Actually, today we shared tips about the Instagram profile and highlights. So there's lots of training and material on our Facebook and Instagram. So make sure you're following us there, as well as LinkedIn. Please stay in touch, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Melissa.